My life seemed flawless to the outside world. A beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, an immaculate garden, a sparkling pool that shimmered under the hot summer sun, and a husband, Ben, who was successful and well-liked by everyone. We had a daughter, Lily, who was just finishing high school, a bright, determined young woman with a promising future ahead. But behind those closed doors, it was a different story. Ben and I had grown distant over the years. He was always caught up in his work, and when he did come home, he barely noticed me, too absorbed in his emails or his TV shows. The affection we once had for each other seemed to have evaporated, leaving an emptiness I couldn't fill. I was just a shadow in my own home. It was one of those quiet Saturdays in early summer when I first noticed Noah, my daughter's best friend. He had been coming over for years, but that day, something about him caught my attention. He was a 19-year-old college student, tall and athletic, with an energy that seemed to light up any room he walked into. I had always known him to be polite, a bit shy, but confident in a way that intrigued me. That afternoon, Lily had invited Noah over to swim in the pool, something they did often. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I glanced out the sliding door and saw him standing by the pool, his dark hair damp, his strong, lean body glistening in the sunlight. As he dove effortlessly into the water and resurfaced with a grin, something inside me stirred. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though he was undeniably handsome, it was the way he carried himself, so self-assured, so unlike Ben, whose fatigue seemed to weigh him down. I quickly shook my head and returned to my chores, brushing off the strange flutter in my chest. But the feeling lingered, and as the weeks passed, I found myself more and more aware of Noah's presence. Every time he came over, I would find excuses to be near him, passing by the kitchen when he was there, sitting by the pool with a book, even though I wasn't really reading. The first time we really spoke alone was one evening when Lily had gone out with some friends, and Noah stayed behind to finish some homework. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner when he walked in to ask if I had any extra paper for his printer. Of course, I said, my voice too soft, the proximity to him unsettling. It's in the office. Thanks, he replied. He seemed to hesitate for a moment before adding, you've been really quiet lately, Claire. Everything okay? I smiled, trying to keep my composure. Just tired, Noah. Nothing to worry about. But he didn't seem convinced. There was a perceptiveness in his gaze, like he could see right through the smile I had plastered on my face. I get it, he said, his voice sympathetic. Sometimes, we forget to take care of ourselves. His words struck me in a way that I couldn't explain. I had spent so long taking care of everyone else that I had forgotten what it felt like to take care of me. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that simple truth until he said it. After that day, Noah seemed to seek out these small moments with me. We talked more, sometimes casually, sometimes with an unexpected depth. He wasn't just interested in Lily's life but mine as well. He would ask about my childhood, about my dreams, about things that I had long buried in the back of my mind. He was patient and kind, and as time went on, I couldn't help but notice how his attention made me feel alive, noticed. One afternoon, when the sun was low in the sky and the heat of the day was fading, I found myself by the pool again, reading a book, though my eyes kept drifting to the shimmering water and the soft sound of Noah's voice in the distance. He was chatting with Lily, but I couldn't help but hear the laughter in his voice, the way he teased her playfully. It was something Ben and I had long since lost. Suddenly, Noah appeared beside me, breaking my reverie. "Hey, Claire," he said, his tone light but warm. "How's the book?" I glanced up at him, smiling faintly. "Good," I said, though I hadn't absorbed a word. "Just thinking." He sat down beside me, the sun casting a golden glow across his face. "About what?" I hesitated. It felt strange to be so open, but there was something about him that made it feel safe. "Everything," I said finally. "Life, I guess. Where it's all going." Noah nodded, his expression thoughtful.
"Yeah,
"I get that. Things get complicated sometimes. I guess we just have to figure out what we want out of it, right?" I nodded, unable to form a response. His words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning, and for the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had been longing for someone to understand. As the evening approached, we sat there in silence for a while, just soaking in the last rays of the sun. Something shifted between us. I couldn't explain it, but there was an undeniable connection, a bond that had formed without either of us fully realizing it. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, I found myself alone in the kitchen. Ben was working late, as usual, and the house was still. I was washing the dishes when I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there he was, Noah, standing in the doorway, a hesitant expression on his face. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said quietly. "But I just wanted to check in. See if you're all right." My heart raced. It was late, and this felt wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to push him away. "I'm fine," I said softly. "Just thinking." He stepped closer, his gaze soft but intense. "You don't have to hide from me, Claire. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." His words, so simple, so sincere, made something inside me unravel. He was looking at me with such genuine concern, and it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I appreciate that, Noah," I whispered, the closeness between us undeniable. My pulse quickened, and I fought the urge to step away. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment, I knew things were changing. Noah's gaze dropped to my lips, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was a dangerous moment, one I shouldn't have allowed, but I was no longer in control. I leaned in, and his lips met mine, gentle at first, as if testing the waters. But the kiss deepened quickly, and all the walls I had built over the years crumbled. His hands were on my face, in my hair, pulling me closer. I let him. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a ton of bricks, but I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Not yet. I had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed, and everything changed after that night. I tried to keep my distance, but Noah kept coming around, and each time he did, I felt the pull between us grow stronger. He was everywhere, his laughter, his presence, the way he made me feel. Ben began to notice the change in me. He started asking questions, his suspicion creeping in. I tried to reassure him, but deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth would come out. It wasn't until one evening, weeks later, that it all unraveled. Ben and Lily had gone out for a family dinner, and Noah came over to study with me, as we often did. This time, however, Ben returned earlier than expected. The front door opened, and I heard his footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me as I quickly stood to make sure nothing was out of place, but it was too late. Ben walked in just as Noah and I shared a quiet, intense look. His eyes flicked between the two of us, and then to the empty wine glass on the counter, the half-read book I had left open, and the too close distance between us. "What's going on here?" Ben's voice was a low, quiet demand. The silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't speak. My mind was spinning. Noah, ever the gentleman, stood quickly, looking at me and then back at Ben. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Ben's jaw clenched, his face pale with shock and hurt. "How long?" I couldn't answer. I wanted to, but the words felt like they would destroy everything. "A few weeks," I whispered. The words hung in the air, as heavy and final as the sound of a door slamming shut. Ben stood frozen for a moment, his eyes never leaving mine. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, the door slamming behind him. I had lost him. I knew that. And soon, Lily would find out. The house, once filled with life, now felt hollow and empty. I looked at Noah, but there was no comfort in his eyes. He seemed just as lost as I was.